Right, sure. Why I'm called Sharghzadeh. You know, it's funny. I put Sharghzadeh and the explanation of it on my bios, but it seems like most people think it's Sharghzadeh, which means born in the East, which doesn't really make sense if you're Iranian because there's not really a place that we just call Shargh. So when you're picking a last name about 100 years ago, I don't know who would say born in the East. Maybe if they're like from Tajikistan or something, which is funny because I'm actually wearing like Tajik clothes right now. But I just met a
Yeah.
brother yesterday from there, and I got some of these from him. And so, yeah, my name means struck by the East. You mentioned my book, by the way. This is it. Thank you for mentioning that. If you guys love Rumi, you should check it out. It's called The Flame of Love. But struck by
Yeah,
the
this is,
East.
by the way, this is not a paid promotion. So this is a promotion from love.
So this basically struck by these culminated in this being written. Essentially, it was that there's this concept in Iranian culture called Sharghzadegi, West struckness or West toxification, and it's made famous by Jalal al Ahmad. He was a leftist writer writing in the Shahs. I think in the 60s the book came out, and it basically talked about Iran's relationship with the West in so many words. And it's a good book; it's worth reading. And I used to tell my family that they were Sharghzadeh, and I would argue all the time about wearing traditional clothes, sitting on the ground versus sitting on a chair, this type of modernism versus tradition conversation. I remember, speaking of the sitting on the ground part, one of my family members said that when the Iranian parliament started, one member insisted on sitting on the ground because he said it was more traditional, that sitting on chairs is a French, something we learned from the French. But anyway, these types of
No, there's
debates would happen.
also, I should add
Uh,
this, that also in the early constitutional period, so this is the early 20th century when Iran establishes a parliament.
mhm.
Initially, it was actually not customary to clap, and then they would just shout things out or say things. But then
Mhm.
eventually, clapping comes to Iranian political culture. And to this day, in Pakistan, I don't think they clap in their
Yeah,
parliamentary session. I think they like tap on the, they
I
tap on
like
the
that
table.
more. Yeah, we
Yeah.
we
So.
overlook how much things have changed on a fundamental level, how fundamentally different we are from people who lived just 100 years ago. I think really to the point of unrecognizability sometimes, that if our ancestors were not like distant ancestors, our great grandparents just 3 generations ago were resurrected, they might barely recognize the lives we live, not just in the sense of like phones or whatever, but in deeper ways. In any case, I used to call them Ghabzadeh, and then they say, okay, well, you're Shahzadeh. And the idea here that many people miss is that this is not, when I say that, it's not self righteous, even. It's almost like a slight jab against myself because being Ghabzadeh isn't good, and the idea is being Shahzadeh isn't good either, right? In the original sense of Sharghzadeh actually is people who are obsessed with seeing the East as a way forward, like being, I don't know, a vassal of China or whatever. So that's the original sense of the word. The word existed before my family called me that. But I took it to mean that I'm the opposite, right? I'm this diaspora kid who became obsessed with Eastern culture. Now, the only difference is, it's important, I think, is that my culture is originally Eastern. So my Shahzadegi is trying to reconnect with something that was lost because I was raised in America, and also because even Iran itself has changed. If I was raised in Iran, I'd still be different than our ancestors. I, wouldn't have a lot in common with them, unfortunately. And it also recognizes that there's a little bit of a cartoonishness to it, right? That in the same way, it's kind of funny when an Iranian tries too hard to be Western. There's a little bit of comedy to me, right? Of course, I am also a performance in my own way, so it's
Mhm.
supposed to be acknowledging that. It's funny when people yell at me on the internet. They say, well, you're just a LARPer too. You're just a performance too. You're just, no one in Iran is like you. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's the point of my name. Like, the point of my name is to acknowledge that subtly. If you were smart enough, you would have gotten that. But anyway.
Yeah, yeah. No, of course. And I mean, I love what you said in one of your reels that modernity has flattened our traditions, including our clothing. So that's why you wear the clothes that you do in order to both revive and also teach the world about all these multiple clothings that existed before
Mhm.
modernization and before the Pahlavi state modernized Iranian clothing. So, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess some could call it LARPing, but it's also, I think, it's in a way it's a teaching moment
Mhm.
or a
But
cultural
another thing
lesson.
is that a lot of people miss about the clothes is that I'm not wearing historical clothing. So the clothing I'm wearing is not what's behind me. What's behind me is actual
Mm,
historical clothing from over
mm,
100 years ago, right? I'm not wearing that. The clothing I'm wearing today is all purchased from contemporary stores and bazaars. I actually make a point of that. So there are some people who reconstruct historical clothes. I'm not one of those people. My point is
Mm.
that Iranians should simply continue the existing traditional clothes and just keep them going and, breathe life into them. I'm not a LARPer in the sense that I look at manuscripts. There are people who do this. I know them. I respect them. I love it. But I don't do that. I don't look at a manuscript, identify fabric, and then sew historical clothing and then say, this is a Qajar tunic. I know people who do this. This is a Safavid tunic. This is a whatever. I don't do that. I go to,
Mm.
Mashhad, to southern Tehran, to all these cities in Iran, and I just ask people, where's the libas mahali sold? Usually there's like one dingy store in the bazaar, and I just buy stuff. So the clothing I wear is all worn today in places in the Persianate world. So like this is worn in Samarkand till this day by Naqshbandis.
Mm.
This is worn in northeastern Iran till this day, mostly by Turkmen, but it's still an Iranian article of clothing. So I think that's also an important distinction people miss, is that my clothing is just commercially available. Like if you go to Mashhad, people just wear shalwar kameez, like in Pakistan. If you go to Kurdistan, people just wear the baggy pants and turbans and stuff. I'm not like an American wearing colonial clothing. People make this
Of
mistake. They
course,
say,
no.
"Oh, if I've seen what you do, I went to this museum and all the workers wear colonial clothing." No, that's not what I'm doing. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah, and I mean,
so
no, and I mean you're right because I mean when I go to like shalwar kameez stores in Pakistan, for example, a lot of things I see, I'm like, this is probably a very modern adaptation of a
no, they
much
are. They're
older form of
modern.
clothing.
The shalwar kameez, the way that we know it, I'm wearing one under here that they have in South Asia. It's a modern adaptation from what used to be worn before. Like it's shorter. The slits along the side make it easier to walk. There's a lot of adaptations. The cufflinks, the collars, it's adapted, but that's fine. That's the thing. The idea that things are frozen is what makes it a LARP. If you thought, no, we should all just dress like the 1800s, like Amish people or Orthodox Jews do, that would be a LARP, right? That would be a cringe performance. What I'm saying is that's actually good. And the tragedy is we missed a better version of that, even. That if Iranian clothes were more widespread till this day, we would have seen more adaptations, more modernizations. Even, for example, the Qajar era clothes is an example of that. The sardari that Qajars would wear is, and maybe I'll send you a photo, you could put it up, is essentially a remix of the Eastern tunic with a Western frock coat. So if a frock
Mm.
coat and a tunic had a baby, it would be the sardari of the Qajar era. And I'm not against that. I think that's good because that's how traditions evolve. No tradition is hermeneutically sealed. So I'm not against even the idea that modern dishtashas have collars and cufflinks and they wear suit jackets over it. That's fine. The world is not static. My issue is that we lost confidence in ourselves and we just decided to abandon our tradition wholesale. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah. And to play the devil's advocate here, I guess the only argument I can see against wearing traditional clothes is that because, say, I grew up in a very modern urban context where like everybody wore like t-shirts and pants,
Mhm.
I would feel a little bit just like unnatural doing it. Even though
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
my own heritage and
Fair
even in
enough.
my living tradition in a way, like you're saying, it readopts itself.
Mhm.
It takes on new forms, but I would still not feel comfortable personally because it's just not something I grew up with,
No,
if
fair
that
enough.
makes
And
sense.
for that reason, actually, in Tehran and inshallah, when we're both back there again, by the way, we spent many
Inshallah.
long hours at cafes discussing our predicament. I wish we had the foresight to record some of those conversations. In the future, we will. But you and I would sit, talk about Iran and whatnot, and our shared experiences. It's funny, we share so many experiences. We've both been raised between Iran and America. We both remember what it was like to be bullied for 9/11. We both lived in New York. We've both been through academia.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many similarities we've had. We've been to the same
Yeah.
conferences randomly. SubhanAllah. It's like Khuda
That's
mikhas, God wanted us to run into each other. But in any case,
that's
in
right.
Iran, there are modern clothing brands that adopt parts of our traditional culture. They're called Elyafi, if I'm not mistaken, the brand, or Elyaf clothes, or Baf the Tabi'i, or something. You see them around them. This is niche Tehran lore, Ta'at Shahr and Enqilab. You know what I'm talking
Mm.
about? It'll be like a
Yeah.
shirt, but it'll have traditional buttons and traditional
Yeah.
collars. And
I've seen those.
yeah, so this, I wish I
Mm.
had one with me. They're all in my suitcase in a basement in Michigan in my family home. I should bring one and show you. I wish, but we can put a photo. Basically, there are new fashion brands that recognize exactly what you're saying. That there is true that, like for example, this. it really isn't practical to wear this if I'm like a coder at a desk job to go around with this. So what they do is they took this tunic and they made it into a normal overshirt. So they shorten it. Instead of being very long, it gets shortened to shirt level. And instead of this being, have you seen in the manuscripts how big the sleeves are? So that's how
Yeah.
they used to be. They made the sleeves
Wow.
shorter and they made this have buttons, and then they put buttons here. So it looks kind of like halfway between a normal shirt and the tunic. So I totally support that. That's the opposite of people would think, oh, you must dislike that because it's modern or whatever. No, the opposite is true. I like that. We should adopt it. It should be normal. It should fit in. It should be, uh, practical to wear. Because I agree, there's a level of impracticality with this clothing for sure. Like you could not work a normal job dressed like this all day. I get it, so that's fine in my opinion.